Okay, it's a cool Saturday on the Gulf Coast. I'm back in the shop working on the legs today. I'm going to cut them to length, mark them for the mortises for the stiles and aprons, and then cut those mortises. So let me show you a couple of things. One would be the special rig I got on my table saw right now, and then I'll show you a story stick. So what I've got right now is I need to cut these to all the exact same length, and I don't have a good stand on my miter saw stand, so I'm going to do it on a table saw. And these are pretty long, so I've had to put an auxiliary fence on my miter gauge, and then on the right hand end I put a stop block that's exactly the right distance from the blade for the table leg length. That way I can ensure that all of them are consistently cut the same length. So I'll cut one and then show you how that's done, and then I'll do the rest of them. Okay, that's it. Using a stop block ensures that all my legs are exactly the same length. So I'll cut the rest of them and then we'll move on to marking. Okay, I got all the legs cut to length, and I've got them laid out here with a dry fitted side panel laying on top of them. And I've got what I call what everybody refers to as a story stick. I've got several things I need to measure, so rather than measure that 8 different times and the inherent error that can come in with measurements, I've made a story stick with little marks on it. This is the mark that indicates where the bottom of this rail should be in relation to the bottom of the leg. Everything is referenced off the bottom of the leg. The next line is where the bottom of the mortise should be, and then where the top of the mortise should be, and then where the rail top will end up. And same thing up here. I've got where the bottom of the apron should line up, where the end of the mortise should be, and where the top of the mortise should be. So rather than measure that 8 different times, actually more than that, because I've got rails that go on other sides as well. But then at the top I've got one operation is going to be the drawer frames. But anyway, there's a lot of measuring, so I've just made this story stick and I'll lay it on there and mark these points. I've got my combination square set for the exact center of the leg, so I'll mark that as well on the mortise markings. And then I'll set my mortising jig up and we'll cut the mortises and the legs. So I'm going to mark one and show you how it's done, and then I'll go ahead and mark the rest of it. Okay, I've got the leg pulled out. I've got my story stick on it. I've already marked the first mark where the rail bottom goes. So then I'll mark the bottom of the mortise and the top of the mortise. I don't really need to mark where the rail top goes. It's just going to be wherever it ends up. And keep this thing lined up. This is the bottom of the apron, the bottom of the mortise, and the top of the mortise. Alright, so those marks will show me when I start cutting the mortises where the exact center of that leg is, where the mortise begins and ends, so I can not overcut and have a big gap showing. And I need to mark the rest of the legs. These are for the sides, for the side panels to fit into. And I'll also need to mark it for the back and the front. And I'll show you in a minute how I label them to make sure I don't get those mortises cut on the wrong side. Okay, what I've done now is just kind of got these standing up on the table with the pieces I just marked facing each other. This would represent one side, this is the other. So there's my mark for the apron and the stile, and the apron and the stile. Same thing here and here. So this is the front, so I've gone in and I've marked drawer and stile, and then apron and stile here. So I'll make sure that I mark the right sides and cut the right side, because sometimes it's easy to get confused and you end up cutting, like, you know, if I had this turned around, I cut the mortises on the wrong side. So I want to mark them like this and make sure I've got everything oriented right, and then I'll go back and put my measurements in and my marks, and then I'll cut the mortises.